Learn to improve conversions and generate more leads with the video podcast at marketingoptimization.tv.
Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with Alex Designs. I am your host, Alex Harris, and today we're chatting with David from HotJar. How you doing, David?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Alex, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, David comes to us all the way from Malta. I was trying to figure out exactly where Malta was because I've heard about it many times, but it's a really small island, I guess, right under Italy.
That's correct.
It looks
tiny, full of sunshine, nice beaches, but very, very small.
Yeah, it looks beautiful there. To get started, what would be your definition of optimization and why is it beneficial?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, to me, optimization is all about understanding what are the levers that affect the performance of a business and pretty much grabbing a hold of them and moving them in the right direction. And it's obviously beneficial to businesses because you can't afford not to do that in today's industries, markets, because one, someone else is probably doing it, and two, we know that growth is everything. So these handles, these levers are probably the easiest, the best way to kind of grow your business.
Mm-hmm. Now, you are the founder of HotJar, which is a new application that's in beta, and it's focused on analytics and feedback all in one tool. And we'll go into detail of that particular tool towards the end of the show. But I'm particularly interested on how people would use the tool for their most benefit. Right now, I believe you have about 10,000 sites using the software, and it specifically what I thought like that it points out the different touch points to make the site very customer centric. Is there like a process that you go through for achieving results from those tools?
Absolutely. We're actually growing quite fast. So now we're already over 20,000 sites.
Wow.
And it's been an enormous challenge, but we're learning a lot from the process. And yeah, it's great to see so many kind of clients actually using HotJar to kind of their benefit in terms of growing their sites. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say that the main way that we've approached this kind of let's say challenge of growing sites with HotJar is we've looked beyond kind of the tool, and that's why I like your question, because in reality it's not just about tools when you really think about it. If we think about most professions, it's typically what you do with the tool. So in fact with HotJar we've taken our time to kind of also propose to our users a methodology, if I may, kind of around how to use the tool. And if we look at HotJar and the kind of the feature set available, so you've got analytics on one side and then you've got feedback on the other, our kind of methodology explains how to go about kind of putting these two things together. And kind of in a way it's a good question, because why did we put them together in the first place? And the reason for it is that we believe that the only way to use analysis, to use data to your benefit, to actually get results, is to actually get the big picture. It's really easy in today's world with all these tools which are available to us to kind of get this big data overload state of mind where it can be tracked, so let's track it. It can be measured, so let's measure it. Let's have an amazing dashboard. But the big keyword is how actionable really is it? Mm-hmm. How much does that number really lead to a specific action which has a result? Mm-hmm. So how actionable really is it? And we actually use this way of thinking when we built HotJar. So we constantly think, will this feature in the tool actually be actionable or not? Mm-hmm. So if you look at the feature set, we've focused a lot around that. And yeah, I mentioned the word methodology briefly because it's difficult to go into this without kind of like slides or explaining. But yeah, if I'd had to kind of condense our methodology, so how we go about using HotJar, what are the steps and how do we break it down? We kind of look at it as three areas. So in order to get this big picture we talked about, to zoom out and really understand what's going on, we identified the three areas of: one, drivers; two is barriers; and three is hooks. Now, why do we use these three areas? Because when you really think about it, if you are going to get the big picture, just as if you had a shop or an actual brick and mortar setup, you want to understand why are visitors coming to your shop and what is driving them. So that's the drivers. Barriers, what's making them leave or making them not shop. And hooks, if they do shop, if they buy stuff, what's really driving? What's the psychology? What's the kind of purpose that they actually bought the product for? So we believe that these three ingredients put together really give you kind of the actionable data that you really need to then go and make changes.
Yeah, and let's put that into a scenario. So someone, let's say, I work a lot in the health and fitness space. So, someone goes to the doctor, they have potentially high cholesterol. Now they have some emotional aspect in their life, so they need to go to Google and try to solve it. So they have this problem, and now they need to go to solve it. So they go to Google, they type in a specific search query. That's their driver or their trigger that's going to force them to actually search for maybe your site. Now they arrive at your landing page, they click on your pay-per-click ad. Now there's some friction or the wrong copy, so they have the barrier to actually entering. And they're maybe not happy with your landing page, so they go ahead and they leave. Now, on another site, there may be a retargeting campaign or another banner ad or something that follows around, and that's the hook that kind of brings you back?
That could be one example, but what we mean by hook, and that's probably the most difficult kind of one to explain. We like the best way we kind of explain kind of how to identify what the hook is by asking why 5 times. So let's say if you bought a book about cholesterol, you'd ask, but why did you buy the book? Because I have cholesterol problems. But why do you need to learn more about cholesterol problems? Because I want to live a healthier life. And why do you want to live a healthier life? Because I want to enjoy my family. Why do you want to enjoy my happy? Because I want to be happy. You see where we're going.
Right.
So it's the whole concept of root cause. And this is why having feedback tools like surveys and polls is so critical, because it opens up the door towards understanding the user's psychology. And obviously, the more you understand that hook, the more you can imagine how powerful it can be to change your site and your pages to reflect, obviously, all three, but primarily that hook. Because if it was enjoying your family, which was the primary hook, then you'd want to show imagery or talk in your copy, kind of build up to that kind of outcome.
I see. Yeah. So the emotional hook, the message match, making sure that it ties to their specific need to solve them, to make their lives better at that particular time on that landing page. That absolutely makes sense, because this is stuff that we live every day. If you're doing web marketing, web design, or conversion rate optimization, you should be data driven and using analytics in the quantitative way, or feedback and surveys in the qualitative way. And in my process, we go through, analytics, looking at Google Analytics and figuring out specifically where people are going. And then on those pages, using heat maps to figure out what people are actually doing on those pages. Heat maps and mouse tracking and all things that HotJar includes. And then we want to figure out that why, those surveys, those polls, those leave behind pop-ups, whatever, to get them to figure out why and why not they're converting. And now HotJar puts this all together into one tool. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. One interface.
Right. And it's a lot of data, and your methodology kind of helps you interpret that data in a more actionable way?
That's a good question. I'd say the methodology is more driving how the features are built and how they work together.
Right.
So, for example, we allow you to do a funnel so you can understand where you're dropping off the most visitors. So that's Whereas most funnels focus on how many people are making it to the next step. We don't care about that. So we only show data for what the drop-offs are.
Okay.
Then with HotJar, when you have drop-offs, you can actually just click a button and say watch users, which gives you recordings, playback of the people that abandoned at that point. So what am I trying to say here? We built it the way we did and included the feature set we did so that we could fulfill the methodology. Without the 7 features that we included in HotJar, we don't think you can fulfill them. Having said that, so it's completely different from us thinking, how do we build a cool analytics tool? Because then we would have included a lot of metrics. So those metrics you're probably not going to find in HotJar. So HotJar is probably the ideal companion to a tool like Google Analytics in reality, where you're going to get a lot of those metrics. But Google Analytics alone is not going to answer some of the critical questions. It's probably going to allow you more to understand where to look, let's say. With HotJar, we're really, really focused on answering questions. That's our main priority.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because me as a website designer, I've always had, maybe it's a limiting belief that, I'm not good at analytics, but I know where to look for the right data that's going to accomplish my hypothesis. Or, if I need to back up a certain data point, how can I find that right heat map or that right mouse flow that says, oh, people aren't doing what we want them to do. So I love all the different tools that you offer in HotJar, which are heat maps, feedback polls, surveys, conversion funnels, form analytics, visitor recordings, and recruiting user testers. And because you could do this with a lot of variety of tools, but if you leverage specific tools, sometimes in the user testing aspect, you get more pro-focused user testers, so it can be a little bit biased if you don't know how to bring the right people in to watch your usability videos.
Agreed.
So the ability to recruit your own users is certainly an advantage as well. And then accompanying that with, form analytics and those surveys and those feedback polls, because, that's one of the issues some of these small businesses do have, is that using all of these different tools separately, it can get kind of expensive.
Absolutely. In fact, in our comparison, I think we're well under like 10% of the price you would pay if you went for these tools individually. So in a way, this obviously comes from my pain point of working kind of as a consultant also in this sphere, that it was a pain point, not just the price. Obviously, the price is a pain point, but it was mainly the fact that you had to interact with so many different interfaces and it made it difficult to connect the dots. So we wanted to make it just really super easy to connect all the dots. Again, the actionable ones, so the ones that we chose. And yeah, make it also affordable at the same time. Reason why I want to make it affordable is I still feel, at least you more than me, we've spent quite a long time in the conversion industry now, so you definitely more than me. But yeah, it's conversion is still growing. It's relatively quite small when you really think about it, and I think a lot of it comes down to we tend to use tools which so far have been quite out of the reach of an average user, let's say. So kind of part of our vision is we want to democratize this. We want to allow web designers and marketers, because we see it mainly as being one or the other or a mix of the two kind of. The lines are blurring, let's say. You've got the designers who do marketing, the marketing who want to do design, so, and the UX obviously side of it. So we want to democratize it and allow these guys to just quickly set up an account and get the data. Why not? So that's the idea. And just to briefly jump back, because I nearly forgot that point about the methodology. So the interface itself, the product, so what we choose to include in it and the way we build it is based on this methodology. But then we go a step beyond. We also provide we have a kind of an action plan, a guide, which explains how to leverage this methodology into an action plan. So we have, basically, we've condensed it. We've spent a lot of time thinking about what are like the key things that when we've worked with clients in the past have had the biggest impact. And we chose these 9 steps. So it's a 9-step action plan based on this methodology. And we provide this free, this is data we just put on HotJar. So anyone can use it, even if they prefer to use other tools. We feel it's kind of part of, again, our kind of vision to democratize the way we go about uncovering these insights.
And people can get that action plan on your blog, or is it available for download?
Yeah, it's available directly on, so it's hotjar.com/action plan.
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead and check that out. I'm certainly going to check it out myself because I use all of these different tools, and I've learned basically everything through experience, trial and error, and I use them to my own advantage. But I love to see professionals using them in a real tested methodology, and then me trying them myself for my own sites and my particular client sites. It's funny interviewing people on the podcast because a lot of this stuff I've been doing for many years, but I didn't know there were specific methodologies for doing certain things, and I've kind of just figured out everything kind of along the way through trial and error. But it's good to see a real action plan out there, so I definitely recommend you go and check that out. Now, we've talked about specifically about some of the features of HotJar, how to get the best out of them. And you touched on it right there, rapid prototyping and that feedback loop. How quickly you get the feedback and then actually iterate. This has just dramatically grown with the lean startup movement and everything that's going on in growth hacking. But if you don't gather that feedback and then use it as actionable data quickly to iterate, then you're probably just wasting a lot of time. You shouldn't gather that feedback and wait 2 weeks to actually try something. Is that part of the action plan, that iteration feedback loop process?
That's a great question. In the methodology itself, we don't go into velocity, but I think we should. So I really like your suggestion. We should probably go into the concept of how to leverage at least the basics of lean. At HotJar, we use this a lot. So we literally deploy code on a daily basis, if not nearly hourly. So what does that mean? So our feedback loop is extremely short. And as you said, it's the only way to do it, because if you don't, it's simple, you lose. So the key is, as you said, to get feedback quickly, iteratively, make a change, and then follow up and see what's happened. And that ties a lot into how kind of HotJar works. So with HotJar is much more report driven. I talked a little bit about big data. So we don't believe in recording all data across your all site pages constantly. Because again, in reality, it's more a question of prioritization at the end of the day. So that's more of a part of the methodology we talk about. So what do I do first? So the methodology kind of helps you understand where to start from. Because in reality, you want to be working on your biggest barrier point. You talked about barriers. With the biggest volume, and you want to start there. That should be your key point where to start. Just like a surgeon would start with the biggest artery with the most blockage. He's not going to start with a tiny vein which has no blockage at all. So kind of we put a lot of importance on that. But yeah, when you really think about it, if you look at how HotJar is built, we've made it very easy with these reports to quickly say, how's this page being used? And then you go make the change and you just redeploy the report and you can see what's the impact. Same goes for feedback. You collect feedback, go and make a change or do a split test. Then you can go back and you can collect feedback again.
Yeah. And maybe we can just call out some specific examples of using feedback for some action steps. I know, for example, when you collect surveys are probably the secret to the success of your conversion. The secrets of qualitative insight lives in your customer's mind. You need to get them out and have them give you specific open-ended feedback for whatever you're doing. And in surveys, you can see patterns of people's language. You can then use that language, that voice of the customer, back in your own headlines, marketing material, or paid ads. What would be some other types of ways to use some of that feedback back actually on your site to actually test?
Yeah, I'd say kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, empathy is probably one of the biggest things. So the ability to see not just the wording, but just to get a general feel. The fact that you read through all these responses, you literally start to become the user, and that in conversion is the ultimate kind of objective. But yeah, I guess the other kind of most actionable insights come from being clever in the way you ask questions. So, for example, on a page where somebody has just converted, so let's say a thank you page, asking a quick poll question, what nearly stopped you from converting? So why is this important? Because it's extremely qualified. Ask this question to everyone else before they converted. You're going to get some noise in there from people who would have never converted. So that's kind of quite an interesting trick that I learned, and that obviously we suggest in the action plan as well. Other questions, which are really like my favorites, I'd say, that just come to mind. One of them would be asking visitors that are landing on your site, where specifically did you hear about, for example, HotJar? And this is interesting. A lot of people do like bucketed answers like Google, and that's not what you want to be doing. In general, in feedback, you don't want to be doing that, because that's where you lose the juicy stuff. But when you ask specifically where have you heard about the company, that can lead to really, really interesting opportunities. So for example, with HotJar, we realized that we were being mentioned by some really key, like famous conversion consultants. So that allowed us to get in touch with these guys, start leveraging that even more, or specific events, which we now know we're going to participate in. So these are like small nuggets of information which can lead to some really interesting opportunities. I'm just thinking, where else? Obviously, the most important of all, when it comes to conversion, from those 3 points, obviously barriers are the most important. So asking visitors on a site, if they didn't take action, why didn't they do it? So for example, with HotJar, you can trigger that if they're abandoning the page with their mouse, you can open up a question. So that's super important. So yeah, I'd say there's a lot of different questions you can ask. In fact, in the action plan, we cover some really interesting suggestions. And I'd say it's important to look at what other people have used, because we found that just changing the question just a little bit can have a huge impact on the response rate as well. So I definitely suggest doing some research and try out different variations.
Yeah, really great examples for sure. And it's what you said was really important, is really becoming your customer. Because as business owners, website designers, marketers, we make a lot of assumptions. It's just natural for us to do it. And that's okay, but those assumptions should be part of your hypothesis. It's all part of that educated guess to actually get those real results, and then leverage that by data. But thinking about the customer in a different way, showing empathy and putting yourselves in their shoes as they go through your site, that will help you think like the customer more, write for them, design for them, and create an experience that's specifically customer-centric for sure. Now, let's tell people specifically, HotJar is in closed beta right now. I even haven't had a chance to actually even use it yet, but I'm looking forward.
Oh no, we have to fix that.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to testing it on my site, which I actually test as much as I possibly can, and I use it for client sites as well. So definitely looking forward to checking out this year. I'm sure you guys are going to see unbelievable growth. I see that you're really involved in the conversion community. You're sponsoring conversionworld.co. If you're not part of that virtual meetup that's coming in April, you definitely want to check that out at conversionworld.co. So let's tell people how they can potentially get onto the beta and what's coming with HotJar.
So actually, the beta just closed. So as in, it's a closed beta, which not closed, ended. So in early April, we've pretty much just made HotJar available to the public. We're kind of no longer in beta mode. So now, just going to hotjar.com, you can pretty much sign up for an account and you're good to go. We've taken it to the next level in terms of our original plan was to have a really affordable plan, which was unlimited. In fact, HotJar, our kind of core plan, which we call now HotJar Pro, is only $29 a month. And this gives you unlimited insights. Now, what do we mean by unlimited? So the difference is that whereas other tools kind of measure all traffic on your site on all pages, and this ends up being quite expensive and uses up your quota really quickly, in our case, we've done it extremely different, completely different from everyone else. And instead, we've done it on demand. So I want to set up a funnel for these pages, and then I want to heat map this page. I want to poll on this page. I want to record visitors today or tomorrow. And you can do this action of gathering data an unlimited amount of times. So we believe this makes it, well, not just us, even our 17,000 users think this is really powerful, because all of a sudden it's much more oriented towards our methodology we talked about. So you prioritize, you work somewhere, make a change, go in and recapture data. And by being unlimited, that means you can literally do this constantly on loop. So it's like taking lean to the ultimate level. So that obviously, I think we've done something extremely clever in the sense of making it affordable by everyone by just changing the model, which is kind of makes a big difference. However, besides the $29 account, because the response we've had was so big, the team between us, we were talking saying, we actually want to make this available to everyone. So we are also releasing HotJar Basic, which is a completely free account, which the reports are a little bit smaller because obviously or else we'd be bankrupt in a few weeks. And there are limitations. So you can only, for example, manage 300 recordings within the interface. But we can allow you also to just delete them and just capture new data. So we're really taking it to the next level. We're literally really democratizing it. So as of now, you can literally go to hotjar.com and sign up for one of the 2 different accounts.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely looking forward to trying out HotJar myself, and I suggest you go and check that out. At the very least, you can sign up for that free version and see what it's like to have all these tools in one dashboard and make all that qualitative and quantitative data work for you. David, to close out, what would be one thing that you would tell optimizers to do to really take their conversion rates and their business to that next level?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I'd say speak to your users, grab the phone and have a chat. For a long time, I didn't do this. I was more focused on the design or the layout and the responsiveness of the site. But when you really think about it, you're selling, even if it's not selling a product, but you're selling something to a human being. So I'd say grabbing the phone and talking to them is probably one of the most insightful, valuable things or ways of investing your time. And that's actually the reason why we included the Recruit user tester. As you mentioned, rightfully so, when you kind of get testers through these platforms which exist, they're not your users, so they just don't match your target market. So in reality, what you want to do is just ask for help or offer an incentive for someone to speak to you on the phone, and then just jump on the phone, have a chat. You can use Skype, share the screen, see how they're using the site. I think even by just speaking to 5 people, you're going to reveal so many interesting things that you need to fix on your site that you're going to be blown away. So I definitely recommend that. On a secondary note, so I'm cheating a little bit, it's going to be 2 things. I'd say make it a point, do some research, teach yourself about user psychology. Because it's pointless to understand the problems, the barriers, why they're not converting, if you don't have the tools to then persuade or change kind of the messaging. Copy is obviously really important, but user psychology is really at the core of this. So just do some research, I'd say, about influence and persuasion. Cialdini has a really good book about influence, so highly recommended.
Yes, influence, the psychology of persuasion, the core foundation of the 6 key principles of influence, for sure. And also there's many other people that I've interviewed on the show. You can check out Natalie Nahai, the web psychologist, or the brain fluence episode. There's some great web psychology content on this podcast and many other stuff out there. But thanks a lot for your time, David.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. Please remember to subscribe to all of the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.